What's up, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and this is my second attempt at talking about the Daredevil Netflix series because I filmed a review this morning and I didn't really like how that video turned out, so this is Mark 2, my second attempt at doing this. First of all, I just want to say I love this series. This is definitely my favorite superhero television series of all time. It's probably one of the top 5 superhero properties outside of comic books. If you take away comic books, if you're just looking at television and movies, this is one of the top 5. I'm not going to say that it's the best thing outside of comics, period, because I do think that there are a few superhero movies out there that are pretty good, and I'm not sure if this series quite tops those, but if you're just looking at television shows, this is definitely the best thing out there from what I've seen. And I haven't watched every single superhero TV show, but out of what I've seen, Daredevil, the first season anyway, is the best one. And you may be saying right now, everyone and their mom has already talked about Daredevil on and off of the internet, so why are you so late to the party? Why are you only just now putting up your video? And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I have a limited amount of time in the day, so I did not watch all 13 episodes in the span of 2 days like some people did, and I definitely didn't want to post a video too soon after the series was released because I assumed that there were other people kind of like me who were taking their time with this thing. And I also wanted to take my time because I assumed if I did like it that I would want to really pace myself. I didn't want to just burn through it all in the span of 4 days and then have nothing else left to watch because I had already watched it all. So I wanted to really pace myself and really enjoy myself, and I did. I really enjoyed it. It took me a little longer to watch it than it did everyone else, but now I can talk about it, and while I don't plan on doing heavy spoiler stuff in this video, if I do spoil something, you've by now had plenty of time to watch this thing if you do have Netflix. So if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and turn this video off now because there might be spoilers and there might not be. The first thing that I want to say is that I have always thought that television is a better venue for superheroes than movies. And the reason being is that with movies, you usually spend roughly 2 years making a movie that is ultimately going to be about 2 hours long. Maybe a little longer, but about 2 hours. And then you wait another 2 years before you get another movie that is about that long. And ultimately, you're not really getting a whole lot. Very rarely do you get more than that in that span of time. And superheroes have always been done in an ongoing fashion. Pretty much since the 1930s, they have been serialized in their adventures. So it makes sense that if you're going to try and take superheroes outside of comic books, that you would want to try and serialize their stories in the same way that they have been serialized in the comics. And what better way to do that in a television show than in a movie? I still think movies can be good. I really love Batman Begins, X-Men First Class. Those are some of my favorite superhero movies. But those are the exceptions to the rule because you really can't take this ongoing narrative that superheroes have in the comics. You can't really take that aspect and use it and utilize it in movies like you can in a television show. And so that's why I've always felt that television is a better way to use superheroes than movies. And I think that Netflix is now proving that it is a better place to do superhero TV shows than television itself. And the reason for that is that in Netflix, you don't have to worry about filling out an entire season. Right now, The Flash is going on. As I record this video, Season 1 of The Flash is about 3 or 4 weeks from being finished. And the last 3 or 4 weeks of The Flash have felt like filler episodes because most of our main characters have known for several weeks now who the big bad of the season is, and they're waiting to confront this guy, not for any good character reasons, but because it's not time for the season finale to come out yet. And when you have 22 episodes of a season, it's a lot harder to take whatever story that you're doing and stretch it to fill all 22 episodes. You're going to have a few fluff episodes thrown in there. With Netflix, at least with Daredevil, I don't know if this is true for every Netflix original series, but with Daredevil, it's only 13 episodes long. And so you don't have to worry about, oh, we have to keep going for another 6 episodes, so let's throw in a few fluff episodes where these characters don't really make any progress in fighting the bad guy because we have to go for 20 episodes. You don't have to worry about that with Netflix, and that is a really refreshing thing to see here. The story is as long as it needs to be It doesn't need to be any longer. It definitely didn't need to be any shorter. I think it was a perfect length for this series. And also, something that I never really considered, because this was the first Netflix original series that I watched, they don't have to worry about commercials. When you're watching The Flash, if you take out all of the commercials, the episode is only about 40-ish minutes long. Whereas in a Netflix original series like Daredevil, an average episode is about 55 minutes long. And so they've got almost 13 hours here to tell the story that they want to tell. And that is much better than having only 2.5 hours to tell any given story, or having, 20-something hours, maybe a little less than that, and trying to stretch your story to fill that time. I think this is the perfect sweet spot for superheroes outside of comic books. And I may be over-exaggerating. My mind may be really excited right now because I really love Daredevil, but I feel like Netflix is the future of superheroes outside of comic books. When I first watched this, I had only seen like 2 episodes at this point, my immediate reaction was, is it too late to have Spider-Man get his own Netflix series instead of getting yet another movie? I liked the Amazing Spider-Man movie, and I liked a few things about the Raimi movies, at least the first 2 movies. I don't think that Spider-Man needs yet another movie. I've always thought that Spider-Man would work better in a TV show, and now that Marvel kind of sort of has him back, or at least they've got some sort of understanding with Sony, now that they've at least got the ability to use Spider-Man, and they've proven that a Netflix series really works for one of their characters, why not do that with multiple characters? Why not do a 13-episode Spider-Man series? Everyone in the world knows who Spider-Man is. They are going to flock to Netflix to watch that. I can understand in 2008 why you might not have wanted to have done a Netflix series on, say, Iron Man or Captain America, because A, Netflix original series weren't really a thing in 2008, and B, in 2008, people didn't know who those characters were. Now, everyone in the world knows who Captain America and Iron Man is. Instead of doing Captain America 3 or Iron Man 4, why not do an Iron Man TV series? I'm thinking about how much better the story of the first Iron Man movie would have been if it had been a Netflix original series that was 13 episodes long instead of 2.5 hours long. I'm thinking that would have been so much better. We could have spent like 2 episodes with Tony overseas and everyone thinking that he's dead. It could have been, 4 episodes before he gets back to the States. We could have really explored the bad guy of the Ironmonger. We could have had so much more fun with that story if it had been done as a Netflix series. And I'm thinking, why can't Marvel just do that now? Why can't, instead of doing Iron Man 4, do something that is a 13-hour long Iron Man story that you want to tell? If you want to do the Armor Wars, don't try and cram that into 2 hours. Do that as a Netflix series. Do Captain America as a Netflix series. There is no reason that any of these characters should be constrained to just showing up in the movies. And one thing you might say is, what about the special effects? I've heard a lot of people say that they didn't really like the special effects in Daredevil. I would say that those people are stupid, because in Daredevil, you don't really need a lot of special effects. All you really need is good fight choreography, and I thought that this series had that. So, yes, you might have the problem with special effects in a science fiction series like Captain America or Iron Man. Maybe you would have that problem in Spider-Man. A lot of his villains are a little larger than life. It would be really hard to do that on more of a tight budget that I'm assuming that Daredevil had. But if something like Daredevil is really successful, which everyone that I'm seeing on the internet has loved this series, I don't see anyone who is disliking this series, I think that it is going to be successful. If it's successful, this is going to show Marvel that they can do this again, that they don't have to let this be a one-time thing. And of course, they've already got plans to do an Iron Fist series and a Luke Cage series and a Jessica Jones series and then eventually a Defenders series, but why stop there? Why not go ahead and get plans in motion to do a Spider-Man series? Instead of doing another movie, which I'm probably not going to care for, do him as a TV series. I would be so much more interested in that than if Spider-Man got yet another movie. Another thing that I really loved about this is that this is not setting up the next big thing. One of the big reasons that I really despise the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as people tend to call it, is because 900,000 times out of 10, the stories aren't really stories in themselves. It's really more, we are doing this to set up the next big thing. Avengers Age of Ultron, as of me filming this video, has not even come out yet, and already I'm seeing Robert Downey Jr. doing promotional stuff for the Civil War movie that's coming out in like 3 or 4 years. They are not concerned with telling a good story. They are concerned with setting up the next big thing. And with Daredevil, you don't have that. They are just telling a story in the here and now. You don't have Thanos showing up at the end of the series saying, hey, I'm Thanos. You're not going to see me be a major part of this story until 2025. You don't have that going on here. There's two exceptions to this. One, there is, and this is where the kind of sort of spoilers kick in, but there is an episode where Daredevil's mentor Stick shows up, and then at the end of that episode, he is talking to somebody else, and it's a character from Daredevil who I don't know. I looked him up, and I didn't recognize the character, so people who are really diehard Daredevil fans will probably know who the character is, but I didn't know who it was, and if you're just watching these 13 episodes, you're not going to have any answer to the question of who was that guy that Stick was talking to. So that's something that is probably setting up Daredevil Season 2, which as of now, we already know that that's coming out next year, and I'm really excited for that because I was afraid that we weren't going to get a Daredevil Season 2 until like 2020, like way after the Defenders stuff came out. We are getting a Daredevil Season 2. And just a side note, I hope that since Daredevil has proven to be so immensely popular with everyone, I hope that when they continue doing Daredevil seasons that they maybe change their minds and don't put him in the Defenders. I really don't have any interest in seeing Daredevil team up with Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, or Iron Fist. I really don't want to see another team of superheroes, especially since that's kind of when I started to lose my interest with the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, is when all of the solo movies started setting up the team-up movie. I really don't have to have that. I would much rather have all these characters just do their own thing and not team up with each other, but we'll see where that goes. That's a long way down the line. I don't have to worry about that for a very long time. The other thing that is potentially being set up here, maybe not, the character of Madame Gao. If you've seen the character, if you've seen the show, you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, if you haven't seen the show, she is one of the Kingpin's allies. We are led to believe that she is from China this entire series, and then at the very end of the series, one of her allies asks her if she's going back to China, and she says she is going considerably farther than that, and that's all we find out. We don't know where she's going, we don't know where she's from, and one person on the internet was suggesting that she might be from the magical city of Kunlun, which is a thing in the Iron Fist comics. I was about to say Iron Man, in the Iron Fist comics, and we know that Iron Fist is getting his own Netflix show. I'm very curious if that is a setup for the Iron Fist series. If it is, it's incredibly subtle. This is 100,000 times subtle, more subtle than anything that the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies have done. This isn't like, hey, I'm slapping you in the face because this is going to be the next big thing and I'm showing you right now after the credits. This isn't like that. This is extremely subtle in how it's setting up Iron Fist, if it's setting up Iron Fist. And I kind of think it is because Madame Gao was involved in a heroin trade, and all of the heroin packets had a little dragon snake thing on them, and so that's Iron Fist's symbol. I'm kind of thinking it is setting up Iron Fist, but like I said, it's extremely subtle. It wasn't something that I really noticed until someone else on the internet kind of pointed it out. So I love that this series is its own story. It's not trying to set up the Jessica Jones series. It's not existing just to do that, which is my big problem with a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Another thing that I really love about this series is that it shows that everything that happens in the same universe doesn't have to be tonally the same. We live in a world that is full of different tones. The Wiggles exist in the same world as a terrorist organization like ISIS. This is not a world where everything is dark and depressing or everything is happy and joyful. And likewise, we don't have to have a superhero universe either in the comics or in TV shows or in movies that is all one singular tone. And I guess some people might say that the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff has been trying to diversify its tone for a little while now. I would say they're more trying to diversify their genres. The Winter Soldier movie, which I still haven't watched, yes, I'm a war criminal, you guys can all lynch me for not watching a movie that everyone says is really awesome. The Winter Soldier movie is apparently kind of a crime movie, or a political thriller kind of thing. And then Thor the Dark World is a fantasy movie, yet they happen in the same world. But tonally, all of these movies are very similar. They all have that same irreverent, funny tone to them, and the Daredevil series does not. It has a very different tone, but it is still set in the same world where a little baby tree is dancing to the Jackson 5 at the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. That really is interesting to me because, again, this series is immensely popular. Everyone I've seen on the internet loves this series, and so it's really going to be very interesting to see, is Marvel going to try and take more risks? Are they going to try and have more of a diversity with the tone of all of their projects? I don't have to have everything be the same kind of humor as, say, Iron Man cracking jokes all the time. I don't have to have that all the time. And I'm very interested to see if this is going to allow Marvel to do that now that they've had a success with something that is considerably darker than anything else that they've ever done before. And speaking of going back to how this is set in the world of the Avengers, I really love one thing that I'm going to talk about. It's a minor spoiler. Foggy Nelson and Matt Murdock, they get their office in Hell's Kitchen, and the reason that they get their office so cheap is because this was an area that was devastated by the invasion of New York, which happened in the first Avengers movie. And that, I was telling a friend of mine, that is a way to make a shared universe work, and it's not intrusive on the story. 900,000 times out of 10, this whole shared universe thing, which is a phrase that I'm increasingly growing to hate these days, this whole shared universe thing, most of the time, is just a way to slap fans in the face and say, hey, this movie is set in the same world as that movie over there. We're going to have an intrusive line of dialogue that doesn't really belong here, but it's here to serve to remind you that this is set in the same world as that. Daredevil doesn't do that. It takes something that has happened in this world, the invasion of New York, and it uses it to set up something in this story. Not even a major thing, just, hey, this is how they got their office so cheap. It's a very minor thing, but it works. That is how superhero shared universes should be. If it's something that can serve the story, yes, go ahead and have Captain America mention Thor, or have him go and meet Iron Man to get help on something, but don't have all of these projects exist just to kind of service each other and remind everyone that they all happen in the same world. You don't have to do that. Now, so far I've talked very little about the series itself. I've mostly been talking about how this series is potentially going to impact superheroes outside of comic books, because that is really what I wanted to talk about here, but I did want to talk a little bit about the series. Basically, this series is awesome. I've said it a few times now. It is my favorite superhero TV show. If you have Netflix and you haven't watched it, what are you doing watching me? Go watch that thing right now, son. It's awesome. I should go ahead and mention I actually haven't read that many Daredevil comics. I've only read roughly the first 60 issues of the Silver Age Daredevil. I haven't read any of the Frank Miller stuff, any of the Bendis stuff, any of the Brubaker stuff. I haven't read any of that stuff. I've only read the Silver Age Daredevil. And so, for me, I was very surprised to see just how much of this series draws on the Silver Age Daredevil. For one, you kind of sort of have the same status quo of Foggy, Matt, and Karen all working together at Nelson and Murdoch. That's set up in the Silver Age. We also have specific things from the Silver Age that happen here. For example, in some of the Silver Age comics, Foggy really doesn't like Daredevil. That's set up here, or it happens here before something else that happens here, which I'm not going to talk about. And also, we kind of sort of have a love triangle between Karen, Foggy, and Matt, but it's played much more subtly here, and in my opinion, it's played smarter here than I've ever seen any love triangle played before. In the comics, it wasn't really a love triangle because you also had Karen who had feelings for Daredevil, and then Matt Murdock created his fictional twin brother Mike Murdock, and then Karen kind of sort of had feelings for Mike as well. And so it was really more of a love hexagon or whatever. And so that is kind of how it was in the comics. It's played a lot better in the TV show. And I was really surprised to see that this felt a lot like the Silver Age, just considerably darker. And of course, the darkness comes from everything that's come out after Frank Miller, which I haven't read, but when you look at Frank Miller's stuff, it is considerably dark. I also want to say, this series is not 100% flawless. While I really enjoyed this series, and it is the best TV series for superheroes, period, there are a few very minor quibbles that I have with this show. For example, if you have seen it, you're going to know what I'm talking about. At one point, Ben Urich is looking at a photo of New York from the 1970s, and he sees a picture of a election sign for Wilson Fisk's father. It says, "Vote Bill Fisk." And then, the very next time that we see Ben Urich, he's talking to Karen Page, and he says that Bill Fisk owed money to Rigoletto, who was the previous mob boss before the Kingpin. How did Ben Urich know that? We don't ever see him find out this information. He just randomly has this information. And then you've also got something like how Wilson Fisk finds out that somebody went to visit his mom, and so he's kind of worried about his mom. He thinks that somebody is going to target her in an effort to get to him. And then he finds out somehow that Ben Urich was the one who visited his mom. We don't know how he knew that, but he did somehow. And it's really minor stuff like that that I wanted to complain about. It's not even worth mentioning, really. When you consider that this whole thing is 13 hours long and my only complaint amounts to about 2 minutes, that's pretty good, I think. I did want to say that I really love the actors here. The actors are absolutely tearing it up. Every single one of them brings their A game. They are tearing it up 110%. All of them are awesome. You know how way back in 2008, when everyone was peeing their pants in excitement over the Iron Man movie, and a lot of people were saying that Robert Downey Jr. became Tony Stark, and now, for them, he is Tony Stark, even more so than the comic book version is. In my opinion, Charlie Cox is Daredevil. This is not a slap in the face to Ben Affleck. I think that he's a very fine actor, but he did not become the character of Daredevil for me like Charlie Cox did. And part of that might be that when I watched the Daredevil movie for the first time, I wasn't as familiar with the character of Daredevil from the comics. And now I'm slightly more familiar, but I still think that whenever I go and read the Daredevil comics now, at least the Daredevil comics that have Matt Murdock in them, I'm going to look at that character and I'm going to say, there's Charlie Cox playing Daredevil right there on the page. He is Daredevil for me, just like Eldon the guy who plays Foggy. I don't know his last name. Sorry, Eldon. I think that he is the perfect Foggy Nelson. Again, not a slap in the face to Jon Favreau, although this guy does a lot better job of playing a well-rounded character. And again, that comes back to they have 13 hours to make the guy who in 2 hours is just comic relief be more of a well-rounded, three-dimensional, fleshed-out character who actually has goals and motivations and something to bring to the character. In a 2-hour movie, he just amounts to being the slapstick character who Matt Murdock gets to kind of make fun of on the side. And I really love that this guy is actually able to become that character. I really like all of the actors here. I don't think there's a single actor in the show that I did not like. Just about every actor here is absolutely tearing it up. And I know I've said that like 3 times already. The acting is very solid. The writing is about 99.9% solid. But there is that once in a blue moon moment where something quite doesn't match up to the way it should happen. But again, this is a darn near perfect TV series. Out of 13 hours, if I only have 2 or 3 complaints, then that's not a really big deal, I don't think. I think that I can give this thing a standing ovation. I am super excited for Daredevil Season 2. It's going to be a lot harder for me to avoid news and stuff like that about Daredevil Season 2. I was able to avoid most things about this series leading up to it because I was kind of like, it's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to think of it. But then when I watched it, I was like, this is amazing. I want to cry. And so now I'm really excited about Daredevil Season 2. It's going to be really hard for me to not look up stuff whenever we get information about the making of Season 2 as it happens. I'm also tentatively a little worried that now that this series has been so good, that Season 2 is going to be much more of a setup for Iron Fist or Luke Cage or the Defenders series, because Marvel has demonstrated that they are very rigidly sticking to their plan. Very, very rarely will they change their plans based on fan reaction, and I don't want to see this series get embroiled in the Defenders. I would much rather the Defenders not even happen, or if it's going to happen, make the Defenders be the Hulk and Doctor Strange and Namor. Don't do the Defenders with Daredevil. Don't take something that I love and try and embroil it in stuff that I don't love. I really don't want that to happen. This series, while I'm on the subject, has made me a little more excited for the other Netflix shows that are coming. I wasn't especially excited for Luke Cage or Jessica Jones, and admittedly, I'm still not very excited for them, but I'm a little more excited now than I was before I watched Daredevil. And I am very excited for Iron Fist. I've never really read a lot of Iron Fist in the comics, but he's a character who I am very interested in seeing play out on the screen. So that's about all I have to say about the Daredevil TV series, and also my thoughts on how this could potentially be a huge game changer, how it could potentially be a very good thing for superheroes outside of comic books. Those are all of my thoughts. This is a pretty long video, but hey, I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to say. It probably could have been 2 videos even, but I didn't want to do that. So that's all I have to say. I hope that you guys liked this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later in the week with a couple of different other videos. So see you then. Have a good one. I would say that